What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode live stream about Tesla Daily. Joining us today.
Hey, everybody.
What's up, guys? So Tesla stock hits all-time highs, about 950 per share closing price. So we thought we'd celebrate with you guys a little, talk about what's happening, go over the news. Let's just jump into it. Why not? So we got some pretty surprising news today out of CATL, a Bloomberg report talking about their new million-mile battery from China. So we all know Tesla is rumored to be working on their million-mile battery for Battery Investor Day, and CATL has been a rumored partner with them, even potentially working on that battery factory in Shanghai next to the Gigafactory. And now the chairman of CATL is coming out with this individual Bloomberg report being like, we basically have developed a million-mile battery that's ready for sale. It's a 10% premium to what we've been selling batteries at, and anybody can order it. So lots of speculation here. Rob, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think a lot of things. I mean, the first thing is that I think to keep in mind is that a lot more goes into the battery than just the life cycle of it. So I think the first reaction from people that watch Tesla closely is, okay, does this take away Tesla's competitive advantage if CATL is producing a million-mile battery? And I think there are so many more elements to consider than the life cycle. So Gally and I were talking a little bit before we started. What chemistry is this? Is this
LFP, lithium iron
yeah.
phosphate, which is like lower energy density. And then nobody thought lithium ion cars would use that until like a month or two ago. There was a report saying CATL and Tesla China were working on these new types of batteries for just the Chinese market because maybe they didn't need enough range, so they could still squeeze in the battery even if it wasn't as energy dense as lithium ion cells.
Exactly. So in some cases, that technology can be a little bit cheaper. So for Tesla, in the case of like the Standard Range Plus from Gigafactory Shanghai, it might make sense to utilize that technology versus NMC, just to keep those costs down because the energy density isn't as critical for that standard range vehicle. So when we think about a million-mile battery like this, it's something worth keeping in mind that it may not be the exact chemistry that is the most energy dense, or it may not be the chemistry that's the cheapest to produce. So there are a lot more factors that need to be considered other than just the sort of like golden benchmark of a million-mile battery. That's not to take anything away from it because there's still high utility from this, especially beyond the vehicle market too. When we think about the high cycle requirements of stationary storage, so there is a significant moment, and if this technology can be brought to market, it's important. But I think we all expect Tesla to bring this to market as well, whether that's through partnering with companies like CATL or developing it on their own and then sort of working with those partners to help them scale production. So I think still a lot to be learned, but I think this is bullish news just for electric powertrains and electric storage overall, for those reasons. So what are your thoughts on that, Gally?
To me, almost the longest range EV on the market by like 100 miles, and their leads actually increased. Of like the next best electric vehicle on the market is 270 miles range. They have 370. So like, in battery breakthroughs and press releases are one thing, but bringing this into a car that's commercial, that says it can go a million miles an hour is a lot different than the battery company announcing it. So we'll see. But my reading in between the lines here is maybe Tesla launches their million mile battery, which I thought they were just going to build in the Terafactory in Texas. Maybe that's actually going to be in the Gigafactory Shanghai as soon as it can do it. And this is the Maxwell technology, and CATL is the partner to help them commercialize it. And that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes here. But very interesting news. And I got this just like ramps up the battery speculation another level because we know Tesla is working with CATL in China. Now CATL has this. We know Tesla wants to do a million miles. I mean,
And I think in terms of the Gigafactory Shanghai report, that's what we sort of heard from Reuters when they had reported on sort of this leaking out, about a month ago or so. They had reported that Tesla would start production of this million-mile battery in Gigafactory Shanghai. And I think at the time that didn't make a ton of sense because
yeah.
are split between your powertrains between Gigafactory Shanghai and your US production. That seems a little bit weird, especially when we know we've heard from Tesla in the past that new technology would be introduced in like the Model S and the X. Obviously, we haven't seen that play out with some of the technology on the Model 3 still not carrying over into
Yeah.
S and X. So can't really take that for much worth right now. But I do think it would be a little bit weird if they put something like this in the Gigafactory Shanghai production, the Model 3 or Model Y, and didn't also carry that over to the US. So maybe it starts in both simultaneously, or maybe some of these rumors are just informed based on CATL actually being in China. So we'll just have to kind of see on that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Gally?
I'm just really curious. And the whole thing of like, is it this new lithium iron phosphate or lithium ion? Because I thought the lithium ion was the million mile battery. So to me, more questions than answers, but nothing really clear coming out of this. And this is kind of related to our next piece of news, which is our China The China sales that came in, like 11,095 sales, is from the Chinese Passenger Car Association data. What's your take on this? 11,000 in May. Is this a
Yeah,
good
so
number?
I think this is the big news for people are seeing these China numbers. There are some headlines out that Tesla, has tripled their deliveries over April and May, because obviously we saw April be a down month in terms of the delivery numbers. So I think a couple important things here. I think we get production and delivery numbers here. We've been a little tight on our schedule today, so we haven't had a ton of time to completely look into this. But I believe both deliveries and production numbers from Gigafactory Shanghai and deliveries in China are right around 1,000 for the month of May. So that's pretty big news, because that implies a really strong production rate from Gigafactory Shanghai. I went through this a couple weeks back in terms of what production Tesla could do for Q2. And the number that I was coming to at that time was about 83,000 vehicles produced in Q2. In that production estimate, I had May production for Gigafactory Shanghai at about 9,500 units. So this is coming in 10-15% higher than what I had forecast, which means that Tesla has upside to my production forecast, assuming things go smoothly in Fremont. We expect that the biggest variable would be Gigafactory Shanghai, because we have a little bit more information on the historical rates that Tesla has achieved from Fremont. So if Tesla can achieve their historical rates from Fremont, and the restart from COVID doesn't take too long, we should easily clear 80,000 in terms of production this quarter. And we know Tesla's coming into the quarter with roughly 30,000 vehicles in inventory. So depending on how big that spread is between Tesla's inventory and how much they draw that down in terms of production versus delivery variance, we could easily see Tesla deliver more vehicles this quarter than they did in Q1. And that has pretty big implications as it relates to possible S&P 500 inclusion, because we know that Tesla last quarter, with 88,000 deliveries, eked out a profit of $16 million on a GAAP profit line. So if Tesla's able to deliver more vehicles this quarter, then technically they have the same opportunity again in Q2 to show that profit. And if they show that profit, they will be eligible for S&P 500 inclusion, because the last
Yeah.
12 months will be profitable, and the most recent quarter would also be profitable. The one thing I would add to that, though, the regulatory credits were, I think, at an all-time high in terms of what Tesla sold in Q1. So we just have to see if Tesla is able to keep those levels of regulatory credits going, or if those sales might be diminished because of the macro environment impact and things like that, uncertainty around changing regulations. So a lot of variability regardless of that delivery number. But it paints a picture where Tesla could be included, and I think people are starting to realize that as we see the stock price rise here.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, I've been a lot more skeptical about the potential bounce back in Q2 of particularly Fremont, like just how fast does that get back up and running with the whole new safety measures. And we got a super chat here, which is super pertinent. With typical accounts payable of 1 to 2 billion at the end of each quarter, get materials before paying supplier later, with shutdown while paying all that while not producing profitability for Q2. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, what I think this brings up, which is like, what's happening with the payables if you shut down for a month? How does, the whole inventory supply chain of parts, how does that impact the cash flow? Like, these are a lot of questions that I don't know, that to me make it kind of like a big wild card. Like, I see Rob's math checking out. I'm like, to me, this sounds too good to be true. They could potentially report a profit and even beat last quarter, but that huge inventory overhang is huge. But then to me, there's just such a big X factor of like, how fast is the ramp back up? Is there any one-time weirdness from the shutdown? And that's what we'll have to see. But I mean, the fact that we're even talking about Tesla even being close to its
Right.
Q1 numbers is a really extremely strong quarter for them. Barely missing a beat. And I think we can all agree that like this is the trough, like Fremont's only ramping from here, Model Y is only ramping from here, Gigafactory Shanghai is only going to keep crushing it. And so I think the market is realizing a lot of that, and that's behind the big move today.
Yeah. One of the things that's exciting, and this doesn't necessarily relate to the profitability, but on the cash flow line, if we do draw down from inventory this quarter and have more vehicles delivered than are produced, that's a big help to the cash flow line. And so we should have positive free cash flow if something like that does happen. The other factor that hurt Tesla's free cash flow in Q1, which I think was like negative 950 million or something like that, the Tesla had a lot of inventory that they had in terms of both parts and vehicles that were sort of like work in process at the time the shutdown happened in Fremont. So all that stuff is sitting on the books as a cash outflow.
Yep.
And this quarter it'll be converted into inventory that is then eventually sold. So we should have both the tailwind from deliveries likely exceeding production, and we should have a tailwind on the finished goods inventory and the work in process inventory coming down as well, because Tesla's not having to shut down production in the middle of sort of the workflow. So
Yeah.
there's a couple of cash tailwinds there that probably not a lot of people are thinking about. And again, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with profitability, but it could be an important factor for Q2 just in terms of the reaction to sort of the numbers.
Yep. And moving on to the next thing, one thing that Tesla, or actually on the Q2 numbers, the recognition of deferred revenue because of the stopping at stoplights. I saw someone mention that in the
Yes, that's a good
chat.
point.
You know, that could be, I don't think that'll be more than 10, 20, 30, 40 million.
I think it
But
could be more than that.
What's your take on that? Because recognize the deferred revenue. That's what we're
Yeah,
talking
so the
about.
deferred revenue that Tesla has for autonomous driving, I believe it's in excess of $500 million. So Zach on the Q1 call said that they defer about half the revenue right now from the full self-driving option.
Yeah,
So as they deliver more and more features, they can recognize a bigger and bigger portion of that deferred revenue for autonomous
Yeah.
driving. So this quarter we had the big release of the stoplights and city traffic control. So I think that's a pretty big feature. It's not in all regions yet, so they're not going to be able to recognize 100% of the vehicles for that feature. But obviously, North America is their biggest market, and to deploy that to all vehicles, I think should be a pretty big move. I would think it'd be at least 50 to 100 million if they recognize another 10% or so
Another
of the feature
10%.
set. That would be roughly 50 million, maybe a bit more. So that's sort of the scale that I'm thinking on right now. But yeah, it's just a wild card for this quarter. But
Yeah.
it is a positive wild card for sure, whatever the number ends up being. And we saw that in the past with Smart Summon, which I think was, I don't want to misquote the number. I think it was like 20 million though, or something like that back in Q4.
It was. And or around the number. And I believe we're getting, do you know when the FSD price hike is? I think Elon said that they've officially put the timing on that.
That'll be July 1st.
Okay, so that's right after that.
Right after.
In
But
Q3.
that does give sort of a demand lever for Q2 with the additional price drops that we just had in North America and in China as well, of roughly $2,000 on the Model 3. So you've got that $2,000 price drop, then you have that looming full self-driving price increase coming. I think both of those things help pull demand forward into Q2, which otherwise would have some demand potential issues. We'll just have to see how that shakes out, but it's not something that I'm too concerned at, to be honest.
Yeah. And what was I going to say?
Should we move on to the impact?
Yeah, let's move on to the impact report. So this is, I haven't really had full, it's like 60 pages.
60 pages, pretty dense.
If you go to Tesla's investor relations website, they have the impact report, which basically, Tesla's setting the standard, pushing, like just setting a new bar for essentially corporate transparency about ESG sustainability. Here's what we're doing. Here's our impact on the planet from like product, factories, so many different components, safety of their vehicles. I was extremely impressed, and there was a ton of new, really fascinating data to go through in this report. I encourage everyone to check it out. I'm sure you and I will both put out videos about it. What was your first high level take on this new report? Came out of the blue.
Yeah, no, I think it's just, and I'm the same situation as Gally. I haven't had a full chance to read through everything yet. It's something I'm excited for, and definitely we'll talk more about on my channel. But yeah, it's very dense. It's nice to see that Tesla gives us this sort of information. I think this was actually one of the shareholder submitted requests for the shareholder meeting. I think one of the proposals was that Tesla shares more about the environmental impact, and
Interesting.
the reason the board recommended voting against that is because they feel that they already provide enough of that information, and this report is sort of what they're talking about when they say that they have that information out there. So yeah, I'd definitely encourage everyone to go through it. One of the things that I just saw that was interesting as I was skimming through it, they gave a little bit of information on the recycling that's happening with batteries.
Gigafactory.
Gigafactory, Nevada.
We've a lot of people have been wondering about.
Yeah, so people have questions on that all the time. Tesla basically said, there's not a lot of recycling that they're doing on fleet vehicles right now because not many of those batteries are coming back yet because, the Model S is only 8 years old. So those batteries are still out there, powering vehicles. The ones that do come back, they take those high value materials from those packs and they work them back into the supply chain. So that's pretty cool. And then they also said that like all their R&D test packs and things like that amounts to the majority of the recycling that they're doing right now. But they, when they have a test pack, for example, that isn't going into a final vehicle, they'll take that to Gigafactory Nevada and they'll recycle components from that. So it's something that's going to be really exciting for Tesla in the future, and something that we get a lot of questions on that is sort of in the infancy stage right now, but should be a pretty big part of Tesla's business, not necessarily from a revenue perspective, but just from a sort of how they operate. So I think we're all really excited about that. That was something that just stuck out to me.
And they
first
like
week here.
haven't really been mentioning it. And then Redwood Materials, like you guys say, where JB Straw left, started a recycling company. So many questions swirling, but obviously like Tesla's going to push into this, and it's like how many the sustainability is one component of it, and it's like how many resources can we extract from these used batteries and actually get some sort of value from these packs. I think is going to be huge. So that was really exciting.
I think we're going to go on around Barron, but one quick thing here. I saw someone in the chat asking why I'm not concerned about demand for Q2.
Ooh, that's a good one.
For me, it's more of a question about demand longer term. Q2, it could fall whichever way. Personally, I don't really care. The S&P 500 inclusion is important for people that are trying to trade the stock. If you're just owning the stock, for me, how I think about it is Tesla, if they ship 500,000 vehicles this year, which is what I expect, they'll be at roughly 0.5% of the market share. They'll be at less than 1%.
Yeah. Out of 90 million cars total. Like so much. Tesla's just,
There's such a small part of the market. So let's say the market, in total cuts itself in half. Well, then Tesla's still 1 to 1.5% market share of that dramatically reduced market size due to, natural macroeconomic situation. So that's the first part, is Tesla's growing so rapidly. There's so much room for them to grow into that I think even if there are those macro constraints, Tesla's not going to be hurt too much by that. I also think if we look at, some of the things that have taken place over the last couple of weeks, we've seen the price cuts in North America and China. Tesla has the gross margin to afford to do things like that when they need to. So Tesla will do that to pull the levers as things come up to stoke demand and make sure that they can sell everything that they can produce. They're not stagnant in terms of what they're doing. They can, boost up the referral program. They can start advertising. I know that's like a red flag. They're probably not going to do that. I'm just saying they have levers like that available. And then we have things changing all the time from an incentive package structure. We've seen incentives go up for electric vehicles in Germany this week. We hear more and more rumors about incentives going up in the UK. There could be a £6,000 subsidy added there. So there's things like that that are changing. And I just think Tesla's, the growth that they have available to them means that they're not going to be demand constrained this year. Maybe in Q2, they might be temporarily. We'll just have to see on that. But when we think about the total year and even beyond that, it's not something that I'm concerned about at Tesla's, sales volume levels right now.
Yeah, totally. And do we want to move on to Ron Barron? Because I know he's scheduled for a CNBC appearance tomorrow. Huge Tesla bull. One of his CNBC videos almost always go viral in the Tesla community because I think he's like a billionaire, extremely amazing track record investor. He's been long Tesla for years. And he usually does like these 30 to 40 minute guest segments where he really breaks it down. And now Tesla stock has been on a tear 100. So now that it's at 900, we'll see what he does.
Hopefully another dance.
Just an all-time, he's kind of like a mini Warren Buffett himself, and he's like the Warren Buffett of Tesla sort of. So are you expecting anything in particular for him, or?
Not anything in particular. I do hope that they talk about Tesla. It seems like they always do when he's on. I'm sure with Tesla, closing at its all-time high. And we should clarify, the all-time high for Tesla is around 969, but the all-time high close was today right around 950. So that's what we mean when we say all-time high close. In terms of Barron, though, he always has great comments. He's a very long-term investor, so I think that's something that's very relatable for a lot of Tesla investors is that long time horizon. As I just said, I'm not super focused on an individual quarter because I think, the bull case is spread out over a couple decades. And I think Ron Barron is one of the institutional investors that understands that and is willing to talk about it. And CNBC actually, generally they don't give platforms for those sort of lengthy conversations, but he is able to get that platform from them. So it's always nice to see that, and it's just something worth pointing out for Tesla investors to sort of be aware of as we sort of move through the week, because I think there's some anticipation of that in terms of the movement today, and then we'll probably see a little bit more of that tomorrow if it is discussed.
And I would say the reason why Ron Barron's worth listening to if you're a Tesla investor, not many people get access to Elon Musk, to Tesla's C-suite, that are really in, Tesla's listening to them as much as they're listening to Tesla, and they have a two-way dialogue. He's probably meeting with Elon Musk, so the clues and hints that he can drop about what Elon Musk is thinking, about what the management is thinking, these could be really interesting, sort of really key tidbits that haven't leaked before that, just Ron Barron was in a meeting with Elon Musk last week, let's say, and found out, so there's a lot of cool stuff like that. And I think it's, even as much as what he says, the tone of what he says and how confident he is and how confident his read of management is a lot of great insight there.
Totally agree.
Should we get to the last thing?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions on this one already.
So many questions on Nikola, because the stock is up another 104% today. I got my video. I put out 2 videos on it. Pretty skeptical. But man, this is a crazy one to be tracking. Rob, you had your interview with Trevor Milton. That was amazingly done. I thought that was awesome. What's your take on this? I mean, I was blown. I'll give maybe my 30-second rundown
Go for
first,
it.
which is, I thought it was overvalued at 12 billion. Tesla and Nikola less than $1 million in revenue last year, still a year away from production, burning 88 million. Like, haven't really done anything yet. It's just a paper business plan. Although as good or bad as it wants, like they just haven't done anything. They're nowhere near making money or profits. Even their own projections only project 3 billion in revenue in 2024. Today, up over 104%. We're looking at a market capitalization of 25, 26 billion for a company that's super low gross margin vehicle, not expecting to do 3 billion revenue until 2024. I even think they're not even going to hit that. I mean, this is, it's almost like, wow. Like I thought this is worth 2/3 of what SpaceX is worth, but they haven't even done anything yet. So to me, this is insane. I think part of there's a structural difficulty to get liquidity to short sell the stock. There's not shares available to short, so we're not seeing a true balance in the market. Momentum trading has just run away with this, and day traders are getting a hold of it, and that combined with amazing press Nikola's getting and the non-ability to short is really interesting. And the other thing I will say is if you look at the options trade, the amount of premium in the puts versus the calls, to me, is real evidence that there's a lot more pent-up demand to short this stock that cannot get there and that is leaching out into the options market, and is pricing in massive downside volatility, which to me, kind of backs up my skepticism. But yeah, I'm left here scratching my head saying the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. Neither of us have a position in Nikola at all, just bystanders of this crazy story. But
Yeah, I mean, overall, I sort of agree with those thoughts. I think what we were looking at with the puts, for an example, if you look at like a $50 strike option, the put for that might be 3 times as expensive as the call option for an individual strike. So the options market is pricing in a lot of downside. As Gally said, there's no shares available to short. So once shares do become available, that adds liquidity into the market and adds downside pressure. So I think when you see a stock go up 100% any individual day without really any news, it's always something that's worth thinking about. I think, especially when it's in sort of the domain that Tesla's in. So yeah, as Gally said, I had Trevor on last week for an interview. My personal thoughts on the company, they're pre-revenue right now. A lot has been said about the billions of dollars of reservations that they have. We've talked about how those have come without any sort of deposits. So how firm those are is up for debate. I think the business model, it's interesting, but it's not a business model that I'm personally interested in. I really like Tesla because of the vertical integration that they offer, and I think Elon has a really good understanding of how to optimize that because he is coming from that engineer mindset. So he can go into those different parts of the vertical integration and spend some time there learning about it and decide how to make changes that can capture more value throughout that chain. Whereas, Trevor on my podcast said that, that's not necessarily where his experience comes from, and that they're working more to partner with the people that are good at those things. And I think when you're disrupting an industry like this that is so difficult to succeed in, one of the many reasons that Tesla has been successful has been Elon's ability to go through that entire chain and find those little pieces that add up significantly throughout the entire chain that has allowed Tesla to be successful and to be sort of the revolutionary company that they have been. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. The 25 billion valuation is very head scratching at this point. They IPO'd or the reverse merger happened at a 3 billion valuation, so it's almost up 8x from.
like Nikola sold a bunch of stock at $10 per share, and that was what the financing transaction was. And you're buying at 7 times.
Yes,
above that, right?
I said 3 billion is their projection for 2024, and that's probably a pretty rosy projection right now. And if we compare it to Tesla, go back to mid-March this year.
Tesla was worth the same.
Not the same, but it was worth probably 50 billion, what it was now. So 50, 60 billion. Nikola right now is half that valuation that Tesla was just 3 months ago, and Tesla's revenue run rate is 30 billion. And they're growing at 50% a year, probably more than that.
Dude,
so it doesn't, obviously the market situation was different in March, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the valuation to me right now. So as Gally said, we're looking at the puts, we're looking at the shorting and stuff, and just really curious to see how this plays out. We don't have positions, but both of us are sort of scratching our heads on the valuation.
Yeah, totally. And thank you guys, David. Thanks for the super chats. We got another question here. Bimmer Geezer, thanks for the super chat. Yeah, writing in some way of like people are really excited about this idea of sustainable energy. I even saw some graphic about fund inflows into sustainability funds or like rising. We had with illness 19 this experiment. Everybody stops driving their cars. The air is cleaner within weeks. I mean, I think what we're really seeing here in Nikola is everybody had so much FOMO about missing out on Tesla and is appreciating the energy story, the transportation story, the all facets of the story, and getting so excited about really what Tesla's vision has been all along. They're just Nikola's market cap is sort of leeching off of that. So at a super high level, like I'm just seeing pent up excitement for a new disruption of the transportation space, of people seeing how big of an opportunity this is, and that to me gets me excited because I think as people dive in and do their homework, they'll realize Tesla's 12 to 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears of first mover advantage of hiring JB Straubel, Drew Baglino, these guys who behind the scenes are just battery mastermind wizards, and all of this work they've done. I truly think Tesla is years ahead in terms of battery technology, and all this hype and disruption of another $1 trillion, $100 billion company coming is really just pent up excitement that should be eventually funneled into Tesla.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's getting me excited is like we are seeing a true paradigm shift in the market where it's inevitable that diesel trucks are gone. We need to stop polluting. This is a disaster. This isn't the right way to move stuff around the country. And am excited about that. But like I just keep coming back to like I would be a lot more comfortable and pumped about Nikola if this was like a $2.5 billion company versus 25 billion because you're just pricing in 5 years of perfect execution. And if there's one thing I've learned from watching Tesla and Arcimoto and Neo and every single one of these companies, it's costs twice as much, it's twice as hard, it never goes smoothly. That's how startups work. Building a car is like the hardest startup you could possibly make. So
And that's a good point on Nikola too. Is I feel like in the interview that I did with Trevor and the other interviews that he's done, they've glossed over production a little bit, and we've heard from Elon Musk that producing things in volume is one of the hardest things that you can possibly do, and that he has tons of respect for people that can do that. It's not just about pioneering technology; it's also about bringing that technology to market and doing it profitably. And I feel like that is something that has been missed a lot in the discussions. And again, I really appreciate Trevor for coming on and having that conversation with me. It takes, a lot of courage, I think, to do that, especially on a podcast called Tesla Daily.
Went on the behind enemy lines on
exactly.
the Tesla podcast.
So credit to him for doing that, and for giving us information to, let us decide for ourselves what we think. And I think that's just something that is a big question mark for Nikola right now is how do they produce these vehicles and how do they scale? And until we see that, that's just not something that I'm personally going to be interested in.
Yep. And yeah.
Another
Yeah,
super-
Neo keeps going up as well, which I think people are mentioning in the super chat, which is interesting that it's really like an electric vehicle, clean energy seems to be like a sort of structural market push for all these companies right now. I mean, we're our videos, Tesla's at an all-time high too. They added
And
a
the
10
NASDAQ
billion
is
in
also
market cap today too.
Yeah, and the Nasdaq is also at an all-time high right now too. So I think the whole market right now is relatively frothy. We'll see how that plays out between different segments of the market, but yeah, it's worth noting that the market is also very high right now too.
And we just got a question about Austin and Battery Day. Are you? I feel like Elon locked it in. Definitely coming in third week of May. What are we here? Like second week of June, and we're like, I don't know. I keep telling people like they want to do it in person is my take, and they're not going to do Battery Day until it's in person, and that's going to be tied up with this factory announcement. But I don't know. I feel like that's the CATL news we just talked about. Nikola with their big battery breakthrough. I mean, the Tesla Battery Day has been like the most anticipated EV investor day for the past year. Do you have any updates or thoughts on that?
No, I mean, people keep asking. I'm sure you've gotten the same question of like when it's going to be. We don't know. We don't have any other information, so nothing to share on that. The shareholder meeting is July 7th. I really, really hope that they have it before July 7th because otherwise every single question at the shareholder meeting is going to be when's Battery Day?
You can't blame
And
the shareholders too.
Can you tell us anything more about
Yeah.
batteries? So I really hope it's before that day, and if not, then we'll ask those questions at the shareholder meeting.
Definitely. Anything else to wrap it up, Rob?
I was laughing earlier because someone asked if I'm wearing your shirt. I'm not wearing Galley's shirt. This is my own shirt.
He has his own filthy shirt. Oh, someone just mentioned the UK thing. Really quickly, I think that is fascinating. This rumors about a UK facility, Elon's jet flying there. Like, I have no idea. I haven't heard about this, but my one kind of sprinkle of like 2 cents on this would be that the vehicle to grid application seems to be making a lot of progress in the UK, and Tesla actually filed to be an energy utility company in the UK a couple of weeks ago. So with their auto bidder software. I don't know. There's something. I feel like there's a little bit of substance here to these rumors of Tesla. It's something swirling in the UK. Which, if you had asked me 3 to 6 weeks ago if something's going to happen, I would have been like, no way. There's not a chance Tesla's setting up anything there. But that's also got me scratching my head.
Yeah, and I think Elon was just over in London or the Bristol area early last week too, for a day or two. So more smoke to sort of that fire.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. All the super chats. This was so fun. And I love that you guys like having Rob on, so I can convince him to come on the channel more. Definitely subscribe to Rob's channel if you guys haven't already. Tesla Daily. We'll put the link below. Stay safe out there. And yeah, we'll keep you all posted on the Tesla news, on the Nikola story. I mean, man, what a time. Stay safe out there, guys.
Thanks, guys.